We'll just let people flow in here. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar titled Nutrition and Your Gut Health. Before we get started, I'd like to go through some housekeeping items. Please keep yourself muted throughout the session to keep background noise to a minimum as this session is being recorded. If you have questions, please use our chat box function to type in your questions, or if you have comments, we love comments and feedback as well. So please type those in the chat box and we'll respond to any questions at the very end. The 7-day meal plan handout will be emailed to you after the webinar. So if you're registered, you'll see it in your inbox, delivered to the email address that you registered with for this event. Again, this presentation is being recorded. We will post it on our YouTube channel, and that YouTube channel is Sweet Pea Plant-Based Kitchen, and we can send a link so you can refer back to it for further information. This topic is a hot topic, not only in our field, but it's currently being researched. According to a professor at Purdue University, the gut can have a few trillion bacteria, which is far more diverse than human cells, and roughly 1,000 different species. And how it's formed is really dependent on the ecosystem. So we'll talk about the various ecosystems that are out there and what impacts gut health. So there are various factors that determine or make up the diversity of our microbiome and thereby can affect the future of our health. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We'll first start off with introductions to the dietitians. Then we'll define what whole foods plant-based eating looks like. We'll learn about the terminology, different types of diseases that have been researched and associated with gut health. We'll identify what microbiome diversity is and why I strive for diversity. And next, we'll right after that, we'll discuss ways to improve your gut health through food and nutrition. Briefly talk about gastrointestinal diseases associated with our GI tract. And then we'll talk about the pros and cons of dietary supplements related to taking pre and probiotics. And then lastly, we'll open it up for questions. And again, if you have any questions, please use our chat box function, but we will have time at the end to help answer any questions. So just a quick disclosure, Linda and I do work for Sweet Pea Plant-Based Kitchen. If you have looked at our website, we do have the same last names, but we are not related. Linda is actually in a different state, and I am in Rochester, New York. So my name's Jen. I'm Director of Nutrition at Sweet Pea Plant-Based Kitchen. I completed my undergrad in nutrition dietetics from Cal State Long Beach. So I am formerly a native of California and a transplant now in upstate New York. I completed my dietetic internship through Cornell University. To keep up with my clinical skills, I also worked per diem at Highland Hospital. Prior to joining Sweet Pea, I worked as a school dietitian for Victor Central School District. And I was also, still am a personal trainer, but I previously worked at Midtown Athletic Club. Shortly after joining the Sweet Pea team, I did complete the plant-based nutrition certificate program through the Center for Nutrition Studies. So for me, growing up, I did eat several vegan meals a month for religious reasons. Plants were and still are a huge part of my life growing up. I've definitely learned a lot through working through Sweet Pea and also experiencing some of the success that our clients have been experiencing through eating whole food plant-based. But growing up, you know, fast food and processed foods and meats were very much a part of my life. And so my journey to eating plant-based is ongoing, and I make a conscious effort to eat plant-based primarily for environmental and health reasons. And I'll go ahead and let Linda introduce herself now.
Thanks, Jen. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Linda Nguyen. I'm a dietitian. I am based in Missouri. I completed my undergraduate studies at St. Louis University and my master's degree at Ball State University in 2017. Shortly after graduation, I did start working at a hospital called St. Luke's Hospital, where I am still working part-time today. I work inpatient, but I do have spent some time at the cardiac rehab facility where I teach nutrition workshops and providing cooking demonstrations to promote the benefits of of a predominantly whole foods plant-based diet. So I myself have been plant-based for over 5 years now. And my advice for those just considering going plant-based is that it only gets better with time, and allow yourself to make mistakes and strive for progress, not perfection. So we always like to go through a brief introduction of what like a whole foods plant-based diet is, and then the word diet that's used in our vocabulary as dietitians. So the word diet in this context means a food or drink regularly provided or consumed. For example, a diet of fruits and vegetables or a vegetarian diet. Of course, there are other definitions of diet that we don't use, like the kind and amount of food prescribed for a person or animal for a special reason. An example being put on a low sodium diet, or a regimen of eating and drinking sparingly as to reduce one's weight. So going on a diet. Now, while Sweet Pea does offer a weight loss program, our program focuses more on consuming whole foods plant-based meals and making lifestyle changes. We do not promote calorie counting. We just focus on how we can implement more whole foods into one's eating pattern and how we can better develop the relationship with food. Now, you're probably wondering, you're probably aware that of all the foods that's not included in a whole foods plant-based diet, but let's shift our focus on the foods that we can have, because there's a lot more variety that's included versus excluded. Whole foods plant-based diets consist of an abundance of fruits, veggies, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, and minimally processed foods, such as plant-based milks, cereals, breads, fermented foods, etc. These foods are still in its original form, but maybe slightly altered for the main purpose of preservation, but does not substantially change that nutritional content of the food. One thing that I'm going to point out on the excluded list that's most surprising to most clients is oil. And yes, this also includes extra virgin olive oil. We don't include oil because oil does go through a highly refined process, and much of its antioxidants are lost in the process. Much like you would associate added sugar or powdered sugar as a refined food and not a health food, you should view oil in the same way. Oil is also very calorically dense food that has minimal health benefits. Small studies has also been done in revealing that some oils may be damaging to blood vessels, as well as forming plaque in our arteries. So for those who are concerned about heart disease, it may be an important consideration to limit oil for heart health. Under the umbrella of vegetarian diets, we do have 7 different subcategories. So lacto-vegetarian is a diet that includes dairy, but excludes meat, fish, poultry, and eggs. Ovo-vegetarians consume eggs, but excludes meat, fish, poultry, and dairy. Lacto-ovo consists of dairy and eggs, but excludes meat, fish, and poultry. Then we have pescatarian, poultarian, which excludes meat, but does incorporate some fish and or chicken. And finally, as you can see in this chart, comparing whole foods plant-based versus vegan, essentially anything whole foods plant-based can be vegan. However, not all vegan foods are whole foods plant-based. Vegan diets exclude all animal and animal byproducts, but still includes oils and highly processed foods.
So let's now define the various terms you'll be hearing throughout the remainder of the webinar. So microbiome is a collective genomes of microorganisms in a particular environment. It's essentially the habit. It also includes the microorganisms, their genomes, and the surrounding environment. And then we have the microbiota, which is the whole community of microorganisms themselves, which includes bacteria, fungi, algae, or and viruses. And then we have microbiota diversity, which is a measure of how many different species, and that's dependent on the diversity indices, how evenly distributed they are in the community. So lower diversity is considered a marker of dysbiosis or microbial imbalance in the gut, and has been found in people who have autoimmune diseases, gastrointestinal diseases and disorders, obesity, certain cardiometabolic conditions, and as well as elderly people. And then we have short chain fatty acids, which is abbreviated SCFA. So these are fatty acids with 2 6-carbon atoms that are produced by bacterial fermentation of dietary fibers. They're the main metabolites produced by the microbiota in the large intestine, may influence gut-brain communication and brain function either directly or indirectly. And we'll talk more about short-chain fatty acids as well. So on this slide here, you'll see that the influence of the microbiota is not restricted to just what's in the GI tract. It plays a major role in the bidirectional communication between the GI tract and the central nervous system. So someone had mentioned that mental health was very important. So yes, those are one of the factors that you see listed on here. So other factors that influence how the gut and microbiome develops include pharmaceuticals, so the use of antibiotics, proton pump inhibitors, metformin, which is a diabetes medication, laxatives, levodopa, which is a Parkinson's disease medication, and a few others. Then you have geography, where there are differences in environmental temperatures, pollutants. Places where people live can also affect their gut microbiota profile. And then, of course, our life cycle. So as we're born through infancy, adulthood, we will alter our microbiota through the life cycle stages as well. There is research that shows that the birthing process has shown that babies born vaginally have more gut bacteria from their mother compared to babies who are delivered via a C-section. Babies delivered via a C-section show that they actually acquire more bacteria from their hospital environment. Now, the exact role between the differences and whether this will affect later health later on is still unclear, because babies delivered from both routes can eventually grow and take in bacteria when they feed from everything around them. Thus, their microbiome can be more like one another throughout their lifespan. It also turns out that breastfeeding does play an important role in establishing a healthy microbiome in babies, and it's not only the breast milk, which contains beneficial bacteria and prebiotics, but it's also the contact of the baby to the mother's areola that will introduce about 10% of bacteria to the baby. And this month is also breastfeeding awareness month. So in honor of that, happy breastfeeding month. So, and then we also have stress related to exercise. So that includes high energy expenditure, maybe undernutrition, strenuous exercise. There are also metabolic stressors such as starvation, extreme dieting, smoking, alcohol that are related. And then of course the psychological, so fear, anxiety, cognitive demands, which can interfere with sleep, circadian rhythm can also affect your gut microbiome as well. And then lastly, we have diet, which will be our main focus for today. The changes in the amounts of nutrients consumed within a diet can alter physiology and the nutrient availability and environmental conditions in the colon. So the term you are what you eat is true, because you're not just eating for yourself, you're also eating for your gut bacteria. Anything that is undigested in our diet will actually be consumed and used by nutrients in the gut bacteria. So the different nutrients will favor different bacteria. And believe it or not, you can actually change your gut microbiome within a single day. A study that was done on animals reviewed that a diet change from low fat, plant rich to high fat, high sugar can actually cause small intestine inflammation, whereas a high fiber diet can be protective against gut inflammation. And in this image here, we see how foods that are high in sugar, saturated fat, even high in protein can play a role in altering disease and health. And so on the left side of the spectrum, you see diseases on that left side, and then veering towards the side of health, you see um, the improvements on health. So on the left, you see the decrease in short chain fatty acid, again, which are the healthy metabolites that feed the good bacteria. There's a decrease in that if we increase, the high added sugars, the saturated fats, excessive protein, and then the medications. There's also an increase in LPS, which is a lipopolysaccharide. That's a potent endotoxin produced by bacteria and is associated with diabetes, obesity, progression of kidney disease, and a cascade of inflammatory responses. We also see an increase in TMAO, which is a metabolite produced when your body digests red meat. And that may raise your risk of cardiovascular issues. And we also see some studies that show that an increase of TAMO may even be linked to chronic kidney disease. And then on the other spectrum, we see that an increase in fiber intake, foods that contain probiotics, also polyphenols, can improve metabolism, decrease inflammation, provide insulin sensitivity, more antioxidants, and also reduce risk of some infections and toxins, overall leading to improvements in health status and a healthy gut microbiome.
And just as no one has the exact same DNA, no one's gut microbiome is the same. We are all unique. Even in studies observing identical twins eating the same amount of food, same types of foods, their gut microbiome is still different. And inside us are anywhere between 300 to over 1,000 species of bacteria. And we carry about 39 trillion, mostly bacteria, microorganisms in our colons. So the human microbiome is far more diverse than of human cells, which adds to that complexity in trying to understand how the microbes and their metabolites affect health and modulate some certain diseases. But diversity is a good thing. So studies have revealed that the more diverse and balanced gut microbiotas are, the more this leads to health and longevity, whereas a less diverse gut microbiota is associated with dysbiosis, and it's been linked to different comorbidities. So how do you increase your diversity? Well, a diet consisting of a wide range of whole foods like fruits, veggies, and whole grains. When introducing these foods into your diet, you can alter your gut flora, and as Jen says, in a matter of days. And this because the food that you eat feeds that gut bacteria. And a diet rich in whole foods provides that gut a variety of nutrients to help promote those growth of different bacteria. And this creates that diversity in your gut flora.
So I'm going to touch briefly on a little more further on the different types of foods. So Linda mentioned whole foods. So first and foremost, we do recommend whole foods because, again, whole foods contain those short chain fatty acids, and those are the main metabolites that are listed right under there. You see the acetate, propionate, and the butyrate. These are predominantly produced in the colon by microbial fermentation of dietary fiber and resistant starches. So it's really important to get in those whole foods. And now when we recommend foods that are high in fiber, it's also important to remember that if you're new to incorporating whole foods into your diet, it's important to gradually increase your fiber intake. So for someone who's never eaten beans, it's recommended to start maybe at 1 to 2 tablespoons per day for that whole week. And then in the following week to slowly increase that per day. And then other foods that you want to be on the lookout for to increase and decrease. So foods that you want to decrease will be foods that are high in added sugars and artificial sweeteners. So these types of foods can cause inflammation, as we know. They also will feed the yeast, which will grow and throw off your gut balance. Also, the increase in saturated fat can lead to a decrease in intestinal flora diversity. And then we have fermented foods. So fermented foods will contain high amounts of lactobacilli bacteria. So this is a good thing. And that will then convert sugar to acids and then to alcohols, which your bacteria can use. And so examples of those foods include sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, low in added sugar, tempeh, miso, and there are some others that we'll list at the end here as well. And then we have polyphenols. So polyphenols can travel to the intestines where microbes can use it for fuel. Polyphenols also have anti-inflammatory properties, can decrease blood pressure and cholesterol levels and decrease cellular stress. And examples of those include dark chocolate, almonds, onions, red grapes, broccoli, blueberries, and many others. Decreasing alcohol is also recommended. So high intakes of alcohol can actually overwhelm the GI tract and your liver, in addition to causing inflammation and exacerbating organ damage. And altering high intakes of alcohol can also alterate your microbiota composition and function. So recommended intake for women is 1 or less per day, and for men it's 2 or less per day. We're going to jump into different disorders and diseases. So there's much evidence that supports that the gut microbiota plays a crucial role in regulation of neurochemical pathways, immune health, endocrine, and also metabolic function. The consequences of gut microbiota dysbiosis include a myriad of diseases and disorders correlated to progression of neurodegenerative diseases such as depression, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, autism spectrum disorders. And so the research essentially states that, in order to slow the progression, it's recommended that you increase your diversity or the gut diversity of your microbiome. And those are the things that we listed in the previous slide of things to do. Obesity can be a result of malnutrition and undernutrition, where there's an inadequate balance of energy intake and energy expenditure. So when you think about it on a molecular level, microbes in the human intestines impact absorption, breakdown, and also storage of nutrients, and thereby have potential consequences on the individual. There are recent animal studies that show that the gut microbiota is also involved in regulation of food intake by affecting your hormones that influence metabolic function and areas in the brain that are associated with eating behaviors. And that we know is that gut-brain axis signaling, and it's your vagus nerve that is attached from your stomach to your brain. And so there's in individuals who are obese, it is known that there is a decrease overall in microbial diversity. The specific bacteria that are present or absent and that contribute to obesity is still being researched and has yet to be explained. But again, the underlying theme is that individuals who are obese do have a decrease in microbial diversity, and also insulin resistance and an increase in inflammation. A big one related to gut health, there are many journals out there that link gut health to immune health. According to the NIH, National Institutes of Health, between 14 million and 24 million people in the US suffer from an autoimmune disease, and it continues to rise. So there's a huge prevalence on autoimmune diseases. The gut microbiota also regulates innate and adaptive immune homeostasis, which in turn can affect the development of not only intestinal, but also systemic autoimmune diseases such as type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, eczema, food allergies, asthma, psoriasis, and these are just a few of the common autoimmune diseases out there. Research among various journals on the various autoimmune diseases recommend for people with autoimmune conditions to try and lower inflammation, also to improve gut health, and to eat foods that support the immune system. So those foods will be higher in phytochemicals such as carotenoids, flavonoids, B vitamins, vitamin C, anthocyanins. So the carotenoids you'll find in more of your orange colored fruits and vegetables. The flavonoids are usually a variety of different colors. Your B vitamins, of course, are found in whole grains and beans, and then your vitamin C, which are found in the reds and the oranges, and sometimes just the yellows as well. And then your anthocyanins, which are mostly the blues, like blueberries.
So most GI diseases and disorders are due to inflammation in the digestive tract. Findings from epidemiological studies have indicated that diets high in animal fat, low in fruits and vegetables are the most common patterns associated with an increased risk of these GI complications. So we believe that the westernized diet associated gut dysbiosis is the most ubiquitous environmental factors for these complications. Now, we won't get into the details of all the GI disorders, but it's thought to be due to, again, that dysfunction and dysbiosis of our gut microbiome. Therefore, plant-based diets is recommended for improving gut microbiota because this decreases inflammation, it normalizes bowel movements. And remember that TMAO that Jen previously discussed, plant-based diets do promote gut microbiota that does not know how to make TMAO. So they do promote gut flora that is protective in developing these conditions.
Right, and this is one of our final slides, and we always like to talk about supplements because the supplement industry is a billion-dollar industry. And so let's talk about the different types of pre, pro, and also symbiotics in case you haven't heard. So prebiotics are natural compounds containing fiber, specifically inulin, and natural sugars that feed and stimulate the beneficial bacteria in your gut. So it feeds the probiotics. Probiotics are live microorganisms that keep your gut bacteria balanced and provide you with health benefits, including supporting your immune system, digestive system, and optimizing brain function. So again, basically prebiotics feeds your probiotics. The two work together to enhance digestion and boost your overall health. It's important to note that all fermented foods will contain live cultures. So those live cultures that you see on the right-hand side at the bottom, those are the genus of bacteria. They're out there, and there are many species under each of those three genuses. So again, not all fermented foods will contain these live cultures because processing that involves heat, filtering, or pasteurization may inactivate these live cultures. So things like sourdough bread, even though it contains live cultures because it's baked, it actually does not have actual live cultures in there that would be beneficial for consuming and, touted as a probiotic. Other things, people say beer, beer is fermented too. So that, could contain probiotics, but it doesn't. It doesn't contain the live cultures. And then we have symbiotics, which are actually now being considered as important tools for maintaining good health, prevention of disease, and being used as alternatives for reducing risk of diseases associated with gut health. There is evidence to suggest that symbiotics influence the microbial ecology and may alleviate certain conditions. So symbiotics are a mixture comprising of live organisms and substrates selectively used by host organisms that confers a health benefit on the host. And then probiotics and prebiotics that beneficially affect the host. So this essentially is the middleman. So symbiotics essentially have a combination of both pre and probiotics in them. So the question that we get a lot is related to whether you should supplement with these items listed here. And our first response is it depends because, again, under each of the genuses listed here, there are many species listed under each of them, and each of them have a different purpose. And the research is really ongoing, and it's still in its very early stages. There are um, some theoretical concerns out there related to taking probiotics that include the quality of the supplement not being a high quality because again it's a dietary supplement and it's not regulated by the FDA. Thus the strains that are noted on the supplement label may not contain the actual strain that's listed. So we don't recommend taking a probiotic unless you talk to your doctor first, or have certain conditions. Definitely for um, clients or patients with cancer, we definitely do not recommend probiotics because it's a live culture and you're introducing bacteria into the body when you're immunocompromised. When you're looking at prebiotics and some symbiotics and probiotics, you also have to consider that these come in the synthetic form versus the whole food form. And so when supplements are manufactured, they can be coming, they can be coming from anywhere around the world. And so the bioavailability to the body is not going to be as high compared to the whole foods that you can consume. And so we listed the different types of foods here that you can find under these two different categories of prebiotics and probiotics, just to show you that there are foods that you can consume in the whole form to make up for the pre and the probiotics. And most often people are consuming these types of foods. It's just making sure that your foods are well balanced and that you're consuming a variety of these different foods. And so in summary, we're going to go ahead and close it out here and then we'll go into questions. So the gut microbiome diversity is impacted by medication, geography, life cycle, stages throughout your infancy, stress, and also diet.
Nutritionally, dysbiosis does occur through excessive protein intake, increased intakes of saturated fat and added sugars, and certain medications.
And having a diverse microbiome can improve your immune health. It can give you a longer life, so longevity. There is research that shows that. It can also prevent or slow cognitive decline, and that research is still ongoing. It can also decrease risk of obesity, improve your mood, and also decrease inflammation, which most chronic diseases are associated with chronic inflammation overall in the body.
And lastly, prebiotics and probiotic supplements are still being researched, so it may be unnecessary to take these as they are available through food sources.
And with that, we'd like to open it up for any questions or comments. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you would like to ask your questions. So we'll give you an opportunity to ask those questions. And I know we have a few dietitians on here too. So if you want to pop in and say hello, that would be great. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Jen and Linda. Thank you so much for doing this today. This is really good basic information. I preach this stuff all the time when I'm doing presentations on mental health for my job. Like, hey, the nutrition, the gut-brain connection is a real thing. So I just went whole foods plant-based about 4 weeks ago, and I'm feeling fabulous. And I've never eaten more good food in my life. So I'm excited to be on this journey. So thank you so much for this is really helpful information today. I appreciate it.
Good. Thanks so much for sharing, Karen. We're really excited for you to jump on. It's, we have so many people that come to us and they share a lot about mood and how this whole pandemic has affected them, and in a matter of just switching around, your diet and nutrition, they definitely have felt the impacts of, better sleep, more energy levels, and it does something to your chemical pathways when you're putting all of these good nutrients into the body. So I think most people need to, try it for themselves to really experience it and then say like, okay, is this something that I can stick with long term? Or can I do this, maybe 70% of the time? Because that still makes a huge difference too. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? And we love feedback too. So if you've been, whole food plant-based and you want to share a little bit about your experience, we love to hear that too.
So I know we have one question, and it's how to get rid of flatulence. So I can answer that. So usually, with flatulence, it's a matter of your motility and your bowel movements. So the main culprit of flatulence is actually constipation. So when things are backed up, there's air that's getting developed in there. And of course, there's only one way, that air can be released. So it's important to incorporate lots of fluid, so lots of water, so that you can get things moving. And of course, it's always, I always enjoy when it says, you need to provide that water to help that log float down the stream. So that will definitely help with flatulence. Also, sometimes it's a matter of eating slower, or like more slowly, because if you're eating really fast, you're really incorporating that air when you're swallowing. So sometimes taking that time with chewing and swallowing can help with that too. And of course, sometimes it comes from beverages that you consume. So carbonated beverages also have a lot of carbonation that can make you cause a lot of bloating at the end.
Thanks so much, Linda. And thanks for addressing that question. I do remember seeing that in the very beginning now, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Karen had asked about metformin being specific, having an effect on the gut microbiome. Is there a reason for that versus other medication used in the treatment of diabetes? So Karen, I pulled up a research paper that talked about all the different medications that affect the gut microbiome, and metformin was one that was specifically listed. So I can certainly share that paper with you if you're interested in reading it. It's pretty straightforward and it's an easy read. So I can definitely share that with you so you can take a look at other medications that can, that will interfere. But essentially, some of these medications will interfere with the blood-brain barrier. And so sometimes that will also affect the cognitive health in addition to the gut health as well. So I will share that paper with you. Susan, did you have a question? You just popped in.
I did. Thank you. I'm typing away like crazy, but thank you so much. With IBS, there are some people that follow the FODMAP diet. And some of the things that are on the FODMAP diet are like no-nos, like garlic or certain onions, bananas. What do you suggest? I know there is a long list of the prebiotic stuff, but how do you navigate through that selection of just that limited amount of food, but you want to add those pre and probiotic?
Linda, do you want me to go answer that?
And
then you can add, or
I can chime in. Yes.
Okay. So so I'm not the expert on gut health. Linda's actually taking a course right now on the low FODMAP diet. So she'll chime in and fill in for me. So it's I don't know if you've been recommended to start off with the elimination when you started off on the low FODMAP diet, Susan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a lot of food sensitivities.
Yep.
And the FODMAP diet did bring down a lot of inflammation. But with what Linda had said with constipation, I've introduced a lot more fiber. The psyllium husk drink, the Consil drink, has been extraordinarily beneficial. And I am able to drink a lot more water because there's less inflammation. So because there's so much inflammation, it was hard to take in water. And now that there's less inflammation, I can drink more water, less
Right.
constipation. But
Right.
now I want to kind of replenish my gut health.
Mhm.
And so on the FODMAP, it doesn't have some of those things on there.
Right. And so they recommend to slowly start adding certain foods back in because your gut bacteria can also develop in that period that you've done the elimination diet. So they say to add things slowly back in, even though you didn't reintroduce it back in the beginning, it might be safe to reintroduce it back in. If you cannot add those things back in, that might be the time to look at supplementation. So that's a case by case basis where we would say, oh, talk to your GI doctor or PA, whoever you're working with, and ask them about the prebiotics supplementation.
What are your,
If in,
no, go right ahead.
I say if in fact you can't eat, those lists on the prebiotic list. There's also an app. I don't know if you've downloaded the Monash app.
Oh, no.
That, it's a really great app that actually will allow you to look at a list of different foods. Linda, have you gone through that app before or used
I
it?
have the app, but I haven't like explicitly like go through in detail, but it does highlight like what are the foods that are high and what are foods that are low, and what are like recommendations for it.
What are your thoughts then on having yogurt? Then I didn't see any yogurt on the list, and every company adds in their probiotic, and I know there's different strains for different parts of our gut health. Are you in favor of any type of a yogurt, like a Greek yogurt or a coconut based?
So for our clients, we do avoid dairy. Now, some people will choose to add dairy back in, which is totally fine for the purpose of adding live cultures in. In terms of the strain, I think most yogurts have lactobacilli in their strains of yogurt. And so if you find a yogurt that has that strain, you just want to make sure that's also, low in the added sugars as well. So that would be my recommendation. If you wanted to stick to whole food plant-based, you would want to look at again, the label on the food item. I personally don't do yogurts or the plant-based yogurts. I from time to time will do the Siggy's yogurt, but that's from time to time. So that's my personal favorite brand. Linda, I don't know if you have a personal favorite brand from your whole food plant-based list at all. Foragers is another one that I haven't looked at.
Yes.
Yeah, I usually go with Foragers, the cashew, or the Kite Hill Greek yogurt, and more towards the plain unsweetened ones, just because sometimes that added sugar or the ones that are artificially sweetened could kind of be counterintuitive because the artificial sugars can disrupt your gut microbiome and not feed it properly.
So I do have one more question, and I'll go. What are your thoughts then on the capsules, the supplementation that have the capsules? Is that too much of a probiotic to be introduced into your diet? When they say they have 10 billion or 5 billion of live cultures, that you keep in the refrigerator and you take your capsule. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's ongoing research that actually shows that it's better to take specific strains of probiotics versus taking like tons of strains of probiotics because again, different strains have different purposes. So depending on what purpose you're taking it for, again, that would be dependent on the strain. So more is not better in terms of having more bacterial strains. It's actually, the research now shows that having specific bacterial strains are more helpful.
Great. Thank you so much, ladies. It's been very enlightening.
Thank you, Susan.
Awesome.
Thanks for all the questions.
Sure thing.
And feel free to email us too if you have further questions. So both Linda, I, and Kendra were all available for 15-20 minute consultations if anyone is interested in wanting to talk to us one-on-one. So we have a question. I've been whole food plant-based since February. Initially lost 25 pounds, but have been stuck for a few months. So that's a really loaded question, Mary. There are a number of things that we would have to look at in order to really pinpoint and give you direction on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to have you reach out to us. So you can email me or you can email Linda. And then what we can do is we can take a look and ask you in detail, you know, to be able to better help you with that question, because that's there are many variables to why weight could be stuck there. And Karen, I will send you that article. Nicole, yes, we will share the PowerPoint, and again, it's recorded, so we will also get that over to you. And it looks like Karen had another question for me, which or comment, so I will respond to that. But Veronica, did you have a question for us? Hello.
Hi. So I have been transitioning to whole food plant-based for the past 2 or 3 months. Have not eaten red meat for that time until just the other day. I did go ahead and eat, you know, that good old cheeseburger. I didn't. It really flipped my stomach. And I didn't know if that was really what was happening, like an effect from eating that all of a sudden, and if that could happen that quickly. And what would be the best thing now to try and get back on track?
Linda, you want to tackle that one?
Sure. So just as we say that your gut microbiota could change in a matter of days, if you're eating whole foods plant-based for a few months, your gut has altered in that way to support that that digestive ability for whole foods, more of the fruits and vegetables. So it's kind of like the less you use it, you lose it for your gut. So if you are eating and consuming less animal protein, your body will actually produce less enzymes to produce those digestive enzymes to break down animal protein. So that could be a matter of just the sluggish effect of having not enough digestive enzymes to break down that protein. So it does upset your stomach a little bit.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions? These have all been really, really great questions, and I'm sure really helpful for others to hear too. So don't be shy to ask us. Okay, I'm just going to scroll into the chat box once more. All right, well, Nicole.
Oh, hi. Thank you
Hi.
so much. So I did start eating the foods that you guys were providing back in 2019 after I had ankle surgery. And I was very fortunate to have food, because with eating a whole food plant-based diet, and my husband not supporting that, he just didn't know how to cook the foods without oil or cook foods in general. So that was definitely very helpful for me to have food to eat after my surgery. And so, looking at health and weight loss and things like that, do you have a program for people? My husband has high blood pressure, and he doesn't think that he should eat a plant-based diet because it would be boring, or he doesn't really make food. He just heats things up like that are frozen or prepared foods from the store anyway. So I don't think he knows how to make food in general. But do you have like any kind of program that you do? Is it covered by insurance for people who do need to lose weight that have, medical problems that are caused by being too heavy?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to address the insurance part of it first. Unfortunately, we don't accept insurance. We are in the process of working on that. We do work with a lot of men who have been, big meat eaters their whole life, and are, I would say, the majority of our clients that come to us have, a history of heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes. That is our main clientele. So he is right in that ballpark. Now, though we preach whole food plant-based, we also work with clients to navigate what works best for them and what is going to be the best balance for them. And so, Nicole, for your husband, if he wants to learn how to cook whole food plant-based, that is something that we do offer in the program as a part of the education. If you wanted to add certain meats back in, that's something that we also provide guidance, with as well. So what we encourage people to do when they're a part of, the program is to at least try it for the first 2 weeks. Give it a try. The meals are all prepared, so you don't have to prepare anything. Once you're ready to start cooking, we can share with you recipes, and then you can start adding things slowly back in. And so you'll have that guidance to be able to sustain and to be able to navigate and keep your blood pressure under control. So what I would do, Nicole, is see if he's open to talking to a dietitian just so he can meet with us and understand. Because I think what most people think when they think about doing any type of program is they feel very restricted and they feel like they're never gonna get to eat anything, but that's really not the case in our program. Again, you're working with dietitians. We completely understand what happens psychologically when you do restrict foods. And so we do educate. A big part of it is education to help you understand how foods play a role in certain medical conditions. So I hope that answers your question. And, even if he wanted to do it like half and half, I think that will still be extremely helpful for him. Because again, our meals are prepared fresh on a weekly basis, and we do follow a certain criteria in preparing the meals. Any other? Go ahead.
I just want to add on to that there is a misconception that whole foods plant-based is boring, and it's really not. There's such a variety of foods, and essentially anything that you do love, right? Lasagna, pasta, and anything. There is a whole foods plant-based, even no oil versions of that, and it can be as delicious.
Oh, congratulations. Was that Tom that was on? That was able to improve his cholesterol numbers? Thank you, Mary Beth. They are delicious. My husband and I order the meals every week. Unfortunately, Linda has not had the meals yet. We are working on shipping, so. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and end our presentation here.